Okay, in our last step, what we're going to do is add some utility functions to our module to allow us to interact with this new table. And most of this is going to be review of the previous examples that we've used, but we're also going to add an update statement too, so you can see that in action. Go ahead and go to your module directory and open up the 8th step, which is called Insert Delete Update. And this is for the trails.module file. So what we're going to do is copy it and then paste it over the current code in the trails.module file and save it. I'm going to scroll up to the top. There's a few comments here. Basically, we've added 2 parts to this. First, we've added utility functions for adding, deleting, and updating settings in our new Trails trail database table. And we've also added a few examples of adding data in. So we're not creating an interface in this step, but what we're doing is at least adding some code so that you can see that all of the insert and update statements are running properly. Let's start by scrolling down to the bottom where our new functions are, and beginning with this trails trail add function. Now this expects settings, and this settings is an array of data that will be passed through our interface that includes information about how many items that should display, for example, and what user to use for the table. And we're doing a quick user access check to make sure that the user has administer trails permission in order to continue. If not, then we're just going to return from the function without anything happening. Next, we're globalizing the user variable so that we can use that for our insert statement. And next, we're running the dbinsert function, which you saw in a previous example. And we're just setting the first parameter as the name of the database table that we're going to be inserting into. And then we're running the fields method to add a set of fields that we're going to populate during the insert. So we're taking the settings and we're serializing it so that it will fit inside of the column. Next, we're taking the user ID of the current user and assigning it to the UID column. So this is the user that's creating this new settings for this trail. And we're setting created and changed both to the current time through the request time constant. And finally, we're executing this query and returning the trail ID, which is returned from dbinsert. So all of this should look very familiar. It's pretty much identical to our previous insert example. Let's go ahead and move on to the next statement, which is delete a trail. This is the deletion function when a user is going to delete a trail setting that they've already created. And it gets passed the trail ID as a parameter. So whatever interface we build would just need to pass this trail ID as the single parameter. The number deleted is the return value from dbdelete. And this structure, again, you've seen before. We're grabbing the name of the table and we're adding a condition to it. And the condition is the trail ID equals trail ID, this variable here. Notice that in this condition, unlike the previous condition that we used, there's no operator added. That's because the equal sign is the default, so we can just leave that off. And then finally, we are executing this query and returning the number deleted, just in case that would be some useful data for the function that's calling this function. And finally, we have our trails trail update function, which takes the trail ID of the current trail that we're editing and the new settings as the second parameter. Now, we're using a function called dbupdate, which is a new one. We haven't seen this one before, but it's structured just the same as dbselect and dbdelete. It takes the name of the table that we're going to be working with as the parameter to dbupdate. And then we're using fields. And we're just updating the settings column and the changed column. So we're going to serialize the new settings and replace the settings column and then update the changed timestamp to the current time. we're going to add a condition to check for the trail ID of the trail that we're currently editing. And then we're going to execute the query and run the update. And this returns the number of items that have been updated through this query. So we're going to return that just in case that would be useful. And then if we scroll up to the very top, in Hook init here, in our implementation of Hook init, I've added some example functions that we can use to go ahead and test these functions out. So let me go ahead and uncomment out this first one, which is trails trail add. And what this will do is pass it an array of settings. Now, if you remember, our trails trail add function only takes one parameter, and that's settings. This will allow us to expand the types of settings that are needed because we don't need to change the function in order to adjust to those new settings. We can just pass the new settings through the settings variable. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. And let's go ahead and go to our home page. And because Hook init is running during this process, then we should have a new item in our database table. So I'm going to go to the content. And sure enough, here it is. We have our trail ID of 1. We have some settings, all of the settings that we passed, the user ID of the current user, which is user 1 in this example, and created and changed were both the timestamps in which this trails was created. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the next bit of code, which is trail delete. I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this line out and save it. Now what this will do is it will take this first parameter and it will check for this item in the trails trail database table, and it will delete it. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to refresh this page. Now Hook init will run. A new trails item will be created because we haven't removed that first statement. Let me go ahead and jump back here to show you. Here, so we should have a new item, but the first item that we created should be deleted. So let's go ahead and refresh our database and take a look. Sure enough, we've got 2 new items here, and our first item has been removed. Okay. Now we have one more instance to test out of the function trails trail update. Now this takes as its first parameter the trail ID, and the second parameter the new settings. So we're going to uncomment that out and save it, and then go ahead and refresh the page again. And I'm going to jump back to the code so we can take a look at what's happening here. So this takes 2 as the first parameter, so this second trail ID that was automatically created will be updated. And we should see for setting 1, which we set also when we added the trail, should now be set to updated as the text. Setting 2 should also be updated to some new text. So now let's go ahead and go back to our database and refresh it. And if we take a look here at the text inside of trail number 2, we see that setting number 1 has a value of updated, and setting number 2 has a value of updated 2. So we've tested out our utility functions, and they seem to be working just right. At this point, we can go ahead and create an interface for it, and that's probably what we'll do in future videos.